Hey everyone, Matt Lockaby here, the founder and managing partner at Lockaby PLLC in Lexington, Kentucky. Today we're going to be talking about some antitrust regulations that have been in the news lately, the developments that are going to affect businesses of all sizes. We're going to talk about a new guidance that was issued by the National Labor Relations Board, and we're going to talk about several bills that were introduced into Congress. Let's get started. Antitrust laws exist to prevent monopolies and to promote fair and healthy competition in the market. And in the last few years, we've seen a really big push to guard against big tech and to prohibit these mega mergers amongst the largest organizations in the country, if not in the world. But it's also important to know that antitrust regulations and protections don't just apply to consumer markets, right? Not just to buyers and sellers of goods and services. Antitrust rules also apply to labor markets. And this is where we saw a lot of news in 2024 when the Federal Trade Commission issued a rule that would ban most non-compete agreements between employers and employees and independent contractors. Now, by the end of August of last year, just a few months after the rule was issued, the federal courts had struck down the rule, primarily, determining that the rule had exceeded the FTC's actual authority. So, where are we now? Well, in early January of this year, just before President Trump was inaugurated and just before his administration took office, the National Labor Relations Board issued updated guidelines that were aimed at curtailing certain anti-competitive practices by employers and that in the end, inhibit or restrict employee mobility. The guidelines meant greater scrutiny for things like non-compete agreements and no-poach agreements, the types of things that the NLRB considered harmful to employees, their ability to find better job opportunities, and in general, the types of practices that stifle both innovation and healthy competition in the marketplace. But with the change in administration, it's uncertain whether these latest set of antitrust guidelines are going to be in place as we move forward. However, there have been a couple of developments in Congress that also speak to antitrust regulation. So, most recently, House Republicans introduced a bill that would decrease the FTC's authority to police and review certain kinds of mergers. The House Republicans believe that the FTC's current authority actually stifles innovation and inhibits growth for these organizations. On the other hand, critics of this legislation, or this proposed legislation, argue that by decreasing the FTC's authority, it will lead to an increase in market concentration, which will mean higher prices and fewer choices for consumers. On the flip side, Senator Amy Klobuchar, a Democrat from the state of Minnesota, has introduced legislation that would actually tighten regulations on monopolistic practices and expand the FTC's authority to review proposed mergers. Under the proposed legislation, it features higher penalties, increased oversight, and even stricter rules for these large-scale mergers. So what does this all mean for you and your business? Well, I think there's two takeaways. First, you still have to review your existing use of non-compete agreements and other types of agreements with your workforce that could in any way affect employee mobility. So we're talking about things like no-poach agreements or non-solicitation agreements, and obviously non-compete agreements. You still need to make sure that they're going to comply with state law, which, irrespective of the FTC's rule last year that was issued and then struck down, businesses always needed to comply with state law. You still need to comply with what the FTC is saying about non-compete agreements because even though the rule has been struck down, the FTC still has the power to file enforcement actions against employers for abuse of non-compete agreements. But for now, with the NLRB guidance in place, employers also need to be mindful of what the NLRB is saying and the types of non-compete agreements and other employment inhibiting practices are going to be on the NLRB's radar. If anything changes on that front, we're going to be the first to let you know. Second, there's a lot of attention right now on the federal level to antitrust regulations, right? We've got dueling positions, frankly, with Republicans on one side and Democrats on the other. But for those largest of organizations in the United States, for the most significant of mergers that are going to have the biggest impact on consumers of of goods and services in the United States. Antitrust regulations right now at the outset of President Trump's administration are front and center. Now, are these regulations going to have the biggest impact on Main Street and those small and mid-sized businesses that are really the backbone of our economy? Time will tell, but at this point, we're not anticipating as much of an impact on those businesses. But this is an issue that's going to be developing here over the course of President Trump's term, and it's something to be aware of as we all move forward. So stay informed, stay compliant, and stay competitive. If you've liked this video, hit the like button, subscribe, follow us on our socials. We'll see you next time.